Hello and welcome. My name is Royce Fontenot. I am the Senior Service Hydrologist here at the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Albuquerque, and this is the late January water supply update briefing for New Mexico. So summarizing current conditions relating to water supply across New Mexico, drought has expanded over New Mexico and southern Colorado since October. Snowpack values are currently well below normal for all the basins that are going to impact the New Mexico water supply. La Niña has developed and is in firm control of our weather pattern over New Mexico, and correspondingly, seasonal runoff forecasts are low at this time. So this is the current drought monitor. This is a good snapshot of what's going on in New Mexico as a whole. This is as of January 23rd, the current one as of the date of this recording. And you can see almost all of the state is in some form of drought. Right around 94% of the state is in either D1 or D2 drought, with around 60% in that more severe drought, that D2 category, that darker orange. Of course, the most noticeable impacts, particularly here in winter in New Mexico, is the lack of snowpack. Those who are very avid fans of winter recreation know that many of the snow parks and ski resorts are having a lot of trouble right now due to the low snowpack. So that's going to play into our future and our outlook, this well below normal snowpack. So just how dry has it been? So this is taking a look at the 30-day precipitation percent of normal. We use a 1981 through 2010 period as reference. And this is from our river forecast centers. This is looking at radar data, gauge data, anything we can kind of get our hands on and putting it together. As you can tell, the last 30 days have been pretty dry here in New Mexico. We've had a few systems that have added a little bit of snowpack, particularly in the mountains, but you can see a lot of the areas have just gotten well below 25% of normal precipitation. Some areas actually are still, particularly over the eastern plains, a few reporting stations are still near zero for the last 100 days or so. So again, very dry conditions over the last 30 days. Taking a look further back, 60 days, again, not much improvement there either. Actually, even worse conditions east of the Central Mountain chain. So again, and you can see heading up into the lower Rio Grande Valley, the upper Rio Grande Valley in Colorado, you're seeing those very low values continuing. And looking at 90 days, again, just dry area wide. Again, this is very much driven by La Nina. A little bit better conditions in southeast New Mexico, but not much better. Now, the interesting contrast is when we start looking at October and September precipitation, New Mexico had a very great late monsoon season. So a few things I want to point out about this. This is the October precipitation normal, and we're looking at, again, those bright purples are well above normal. You see, if you're attuned, you're looking on the left there, you see the Continental Divide. That's a difference between how our river forecast centers you create this precipitation product, so there's some radar coverage issues there. So that's sort of that line you're seeing, but the picture and the story it's telling is pretty consistent. It's been fairly dry over the New Mexico-Arizona border and up into the San Juan basins, but east Central Mountain chain and parts of the middle Rio Grande Valley had extreme amount of precipitation there in early October through about October 10th. Really well above normal, some localized flooding, very good for our soil moisture. And for the Pecos in particular, this event and the next graphic I'm about to show you from September helped bring those reservoirs to a seasonal average. They're in good shape right now. So September 2017, continuing that same story, great amount of precipitation, most of that last part of September going into October. So well above normal values. So that's really helped fill those reservoirs. Ute Reservoir was doing very well and actually spilled into the Canadian in October, and the Pecos reservoirs have come up pretty well. Again, that stopped about October 10th. So with that, we went into this dry period, which has carried on into the winter. So let's talk about snowpack, which is really what we need when we're talking about water supply, and the numbers are just not there, and they're not very good. So we'll start from north to south. So taking a look at the right image there, this is from our partners over at the National Resource Conservation Service, the USGA. They do all the snow measurements up in the mountains for us. And look at the upper Rio Grande Basin as of the morning of the 26th. It's only at about 37% of normal. That is well below normal. Looking combined at the San Miguel, Dolores, Animas, and San Juan basins, not much better, about 38% as well. So low numbers up in the headwaters. Moving south into New Mexico, the numbers aren't any better. We've had a recent system come through, help bring those numbers up, but just not where we need to be for this time of year. So looking at the Sangres, for example, they're at about 26% normal. The Rio Chama slightly better at about 3,300 feet. Jemez River Basin at about 31%. Zuni, Blue Water, about 19%. And down southwest, really not doing good at all. The Gila at about 16% over the Rio Hondo, about 8% of normal. Again, we're talking about snow water equivalent. So we melt down all the snow there. How much equivalent rainfall does that give us? That's what we're really looking at. But again, these numbers just are not that great. So look at the 28-day stream flow from the U.S. Geological Survey. Again, kind of the picture here, things are better in some places than others. Those areas, particularly in western New Mexico, the Gila and the San Francisco basins, didn't get that late season rainfall. They're running well below normal. We're starting to see that in the east, too. For those basins that aren't regulated by one of our water agencies, they're just kind of natural flowing basins, did really well. We had that great late season monsoon, which helped fill the reservoirs, particularly on the Pecos. But as we've dried out, we've gone in a dry period, that groundwater at the upper levels at soil, particularly the first foot and a half or so, that moisture is starting to get depleted. So right now, a lot of basins are looking good. For those heavy water users, we know we had a great runoff in 2017. So we're seeing a lot of that still carrying over in the streams and creeks. But if conditions continue, we could see this change. So let's go into the outlooks. Let's talk about the Pecos River. These is a forecast for the total volume from March through July. Each one of these river basins is going to have a little bit different. And the volume's in 1,000 acre feet. But the numbers I kind of want to pay attention to are those dark brown bars. That's the percent of probable of average. Basically, what percentage of normal are we looking at? So on the Pecos, near Pecos, only right now about 30% of normal. And looking at the rest of the Pecos Basin, not that great inflow into Santa Rosa. Right now, the outlook's only about 18% of normal. Now, this is the January outlook. We'll have some still coming, but this is as of the snow on the ground in early January, and we haven't seen much improvement. But these numbers are pretty low. Now, thankfully for the Pecos Basin, we have water in the reservoir, so that certainly is going to help us in our water supply. Going a little bit further north into the Canadian River, this is a March through June outlook. Those numbers are not great either. Looking at those percentage of normals, particularly, for example, the Conscious River inflow, that kind of tells it all, about 30% of normal, wrapping everything together. Again, these are snowmelt driven. Now, we could have a late season monsoon event or an early onset that might help some of these basins, but purely derived on Snowpack, these are our numbers, and they're not looking very good right now for the Canadian. Heading up to the Rio Grande, again, pay attention to those brown bars, At Del Norte in Colorado, the current number right now is about 50% of normal. Not great, not horrible. A little bit better snowpack on the northern part of the basin. But as we start going down through the basin, you can see El Vado, that's the Chama's inflow, only about 30% normal. At Ottawee Bridge, looking about 24% normal. And further south, the numbers are just not good. It can be, statistically something or nothing, but the current forecast right now, downstream of Albuquerque, is not looking very good for percentages. Again, these are based off of the early January snowpack, particularly lower end of the Rio Grande, middle Rio Grande. Those numbers are ultimately going to depend on management decisions. This is assuming natural stream flow. So what actually comes down the Rio Grande is going to be up to those water managers. That's outside the realm of the National Weather Service. So heading to the northwest part of the state, the San Juan River Basin. This is an April through July outlook. Somewhat better, a little more snow there. Looking at the San Juan River near Pagosa Springs up in Colorado, about 55% normal. The expected inflow right now, as of early January, is about 48%. Animas at Durango, about the same thing. And the San Juan River at Farmington is about 42%. Again, on this basin, too, still benefiting from the great runoff in 2017. So we've got a higher than normal reservoir levels there at Navajo Dam. So conditions a little bit better due to storage up there. And going to our southwestern rivers, this is a January through May outlook. Typically, the southern rivers, the Gila and the San Francisco, tend to run off a little sooner. Numbers aren't that great for the Gila or the San Francisco near Glenwood. A little bit better there, about 60% of normal there. But overall, down near Vernon, only about 38% of normal total. So, again, low flows are expected throughout New Mexico. Again, this is being driven by snowpack and La Nina conditions. So let's talk briefly about La Nina. There's El Nino and La Nina. These are ocean atmospheric conditions, primarily in the equatorial Pacific. And the region we really look at is that 3.4 region. So what we're looking at here is El Nino is warmer than normal conditions, which is not what we have right now. And La Nina is colder than normal conditions, which is what we're seeing right now. It's a weak La Nina, but it's firmly in place, and that's what's driving New Mexico. So we look at a departure in degrees Celsius in that region of 3.4 of about minus 0.5 degrees Celsius. And you can see from that line I've thrown up here on the graph, we've solidly been there. So we've got a La Nina that's occurring. Now, on that top right graphic, I really like this graphic because it shows you what to expect in a typical La Nina. And for that is the jet streams further north of us. We have ridge or high pressure over the southwest and drier and warmer than normal conditions. And sure enough, that's what we've been seeing. Last year, it was actually a La Nina year as well. But it wasn't as impactful as we're seeing this year. We're seeing over the southwest a very typical La Nina pattern. So what's that outlook for us? So February through April, this really shouldn't surprise anyone. Looking at the graphic on the left, this is the probability that we'll be above normal. Now, it's not saying how much above normal, but that we will be. So there's a strong probability that all through the southwest and the southern Rockies, we're going to see above normal temperatures. Same thing on the graphic on the right. It's not saying how much below normal precipitation, but just what's the probability. Again, those probabilities are shifted, particularly for southern Colorado, all of New Mexico, and really the southwest mountains of below normal precipitation. And sure enough, that's what we've been seeing. So the drought outlook, these are released the same time as the climate outlooks. Again, with everything I've already shown, this should be no surprise. Droughts likely to persist through April, and development likely. We're going to probably see continued drying conditions over the southeastern part of New Mexico. So in summary, droughts expanded over New Mexico and southern Colorado. Snowpack values are currently well below normal. Some back-of-the-envelope computations as of the date of this recording, just for the Rio Grande, for those areas north of the border in Colorado, through April 1st, we'd need about 215% of normal precipitation from here on to the peak of the season, April 1st, to get those numbers up. It's worse even on the New Mexico side, where we typically peak in snowpack around March 1st, first part of March. We need about 270% of normal. And those are ballpark numbers, but gives you an idea of how much more precipitation we need to catch up, and it's going to be very difficult. La Nina is firmly in control of our climate weather pattern right now, and what we're seeing is very typical of La Nina. And sadly, seasonal runoff forecasts are low. We just currently do not have the snowpack that we'd like to see in the mountains. So for more information, here's a list of links I'll leave up. The U.S. Drought Monitor, that's updated weekly on Thursday mornings. National Weather Service Albuquerque, and then the 3 river forecast centers that service New Mexico. Current USGS Streamflow conditions. The New Mexico Climate Center down at New Mexico State University is an excellent resource for New Mexico climate. Our partners at the Western Regional Climate Center at the Desert Research Institute over in Reno, Nevada. And I cannot state the importance of the USDA, the NRCS. They also supply water supply forecasts. They're our partners. And the NRCS is the one who collects the snow data. None of this would be possible without their efforts. Again, my name is Royce Fontenot. I'm the Senior Service Hydrologist here at the Weather Forecast Office in Albuquerque. If you've got comments, questions, or feedback, please let me know. There's my direct number to my desk there, and there's my email address. So I appreciate your time. We will be updating this water supply briefing in the early part of February with the updated forecast. Thank you.